Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we're going to find out if a pet snake is right for you. So let's get started. Hey guys, so today we are talking about pet snakes. I'll go over a couple different types of reptiles and I'll give you a bunch of different information, and we'll see by the end of this if a pet snake is the best pet for you. When it comes to pet reptiles, I've heard a whole bunch of things from people, like if you, for example, put a snake in a glass tank, a little tank, it's going to stay that size. That is not true. There are a ton of different species and none of them grow to their enclosure size. They all require different size enclosures, they all need different types of heat and humidity, some need UVB, a whole bunch of different stuff. So make sure whatever species you're looking into, you know what to expect by doing a lot of research. If you only have a very small space, maybe something like a hognose or a colubrid or something that stays on the smaller side is right for you. Or if you want something and you want it to be big and impressive, maybe a boa constrictor. But you have to really do research on that species. When it comes to reptiles, I think snakes are way easier than, for example, bearded dragons. Bearded dragons are very cute, but they need daily care. You need to soak them, make sure their temperature is correct. You have to feed them daily. You have to clean their enclosure daily, because if they eat multiple times a day, or at least once a day for adults, they're going to go to the bathroom once a day. Going into this, you should know that at some point you're going to get bit, and that's perfectly okay. They are wild animals, and they're normally not going to bite you out of being mean or because they don't like you. It's more or less they're mistaking you for food. So the best way to remedy that is make sure you're feeding them properly and make sure you get a snake hook. That way you can take them out of their enclosure whenever they are in it. That way you're not reaching in and they're mistaking you for a rat. And 9 times out of 10, when you have them out in the open, they're not really going to bite you. Again, they can, and all species are different. Some giant 10-foot female boas are incredibly sweet and friendly, and then you could have a 2-foot corn snake that just bites you every time. It all depends on not only the species, but every species, it really varies. I have some ball pythons that are the sweetest things, super friendly, you can touch them anywhere, and then other ones, you open the cage, they just want food, and they'll actually lunge out of the enclosure just because they have that much of a food response. If you do get a snake, over time you will start to learn their body language if you really pay attention. A lot of times I can tell if my snakes are kind of on the grumpier side, if I should bring them out or not. They're whipping around looking at you in strike pose. They really think that you're a meal or you have a meal, so that's probably not the best time to hold them if you're not about to feed them. But if you want something that you can, for example, hold every single day, a snake is not in the right direction to go. I would go more towards a bearded dragon or a cat. You can hold them often, but it has to be in very short amounts. You don't want to stress out that animal. Reptiles don't really have the same type of brain that like a cat or a dog does that can show affection as much. They can learn to tolerate humans. They can be very friendly and very calm around humans, but at any point they can still bite. And one of the biggest things about reptiles is making sure it's in the proper setup. If you go to any pet store, you'll generally find ball pythons, bearded dragons, corn snakes, geckos, some kinds of frogs. But if you look at, like, for example, their bearded dragon setup, it's a glass tank with all this stuff, and then you look at their ball python setup. They're almost identical, and they have the exact same tank size, the exact same setup, the same bulb, same fixtures, but one of them needs a 100-degree hotspot, and one of them needs a 90-degree hotspot. So don't always believe first things you see at pet stores. They're made to sell as much as they can, as easily as they can, but most reptiles should not be kept in glass tanks. And 2 reptiles, that one's from Australia, one's from Africa, they don't have the same requirements for their enclosure. So make sure you do a lot of actual research. Most reptiles should be in a Pvc enclosure. This is something that can work for a bearded dragon, an Ackie monitor, larger snake. You can put all different kinds of snakes in cages like this if set up to the specific needs that they have. You can even do things like this. This is a rack system. This is what's behind me. This is what I prefer to use because it really helps me save on space. I can do different size bins for all the different size snakes that I have, and these have worked really well for me. The fact that all my females have eggs almost every single year, they all eat consistently, they all shed consistently. I know that I'm giving all the proper care and need that they have, because they wouldn't be doing that if they were not in adequate setups. Other things about snakes, Not only should you not do glass, they are not going to be in one size cage their entire lives. Pretty much all snakes, at least all that I can think of off the top of my head, start in a smaller enclosure and work their way up to what they're going to be as a full-grown adult. If you put a baby snake in a very large enclosure, normally it stresses them out and they're not going to eat for you. And over time they will pass away. If you take a adult and put it into small of an enclosure, it could also be too stressed. It can't stretch out. It can't do the things that it's supposed to do. So make sure you realize you're not just going to be going out buying one enclosure. That's it for your snake. You're done. These are not that cheap of animals. For example, we'll go with a ball python. If you want to buy and use bins, that's perfectly fine. Like let's say you want to do just tubs with the lids on it and poke holes in it for ventilation, stuff like that. You can start with a 6-quart bin. It's a few dollars. Then you're going to want to do a 12-quart bin. Then a 28. Then a 41 eventually. And as they go up, their heat size has to go up. So you're going to use heat tape, heating pads, different things like that. Those go up with the size of the enclosures. Even things like corn snakes start in a very small enclosure and they can work their way all the way up to, if you're wanting a PVC enclosure like this. These are not setups for baby snakes. You're still going to need some sort of setup, either smaller PVC cages, smaller Sterlite bins, or whatever type of bins you're going to use, and they grow in size. So make sure you realize this is going to be a constantly changing process until they're full grown, or you should just buy an adult snake. It's not very hard to find an older snake. A lot of times they're not even that much more expensive from the babies, especially males. So buy a full-grown snake. That way you know what it's eating. That way you know what size enclosure you're going to need. And sometimes they even come with enclosures depending on where you're getting them from. I truly believe how you treat your reptile is how they are going to act. Because I have several snakes that were aggressive, wouldn't eat for anybody, were very sickly. I brought them here, and over time and getting used to me, they are all eating perfectly. I have no issues with any of my snakes. But showing them kindness doesn't mean they love me, but it knows I'm not going to hurt them. So a lot of these animals, you just have to be consistent. You have to show them you are not a threat, and sometimes you'll make mistakes. I feel like reptiles will kind of feed off your energy, and I don't have any bad snakes. I have some that are still grumpy, but it doesn't mean that they're bad snakes. If and when your snake does bite you, don't give up on it. Don't just give it away. You can't be afraid of it. You can be cautious around it, but it doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. If you want a pet that you don't have to hold that much, a snake can be great. They normally very quickly realize, again, you're not there to hurt them. If you have the perfect setup, if their hot spot's perfect, their humidity's perfect, they're eating consistently for you, there's not much that you have to do care-wise other than that. You can leave them alone if you start a new job, and you can only take them out every other week, every couple of weeks, as long as you're still maintaining their setup. They still have fresh water. They're still eating whenever they're supposed to eat based on the species. You don't have to hold them all of the time. If they're clean and they're in a good environment and they're healthy animals, and you start doing things where you can only take them out every 2 weeks, that's perfectly okay. And then you switch doing something else, you want to pick them up every couple of days, again, that's okay. They're very flexible. I think reptiles can be awesome pets, especially for people with kids. Kids generally either are terrified or they have no fear at all. And that is perfect, because the ones that are afraid, you can have a reptile and show them how simple it is just by having it on display, and they can look at the animal. Or if they have no fear, that's awesome. Show them proper ways to pick up that snake with a snake hook, or show them how to care for them correctly. Teach them things like checking the temperature, stuff like that. They can be very simple if taken care of properly. You can get all different colors, all different sizes. If you want a very small snake, they have those. If you want something that's average or something that's a nice huge display animal, they have those. You can get so many different varieties and species, and all of them need such specific things that I think everyone can find at least one species of snakes that fits their lifestyle based on their size requirements, their cage requirements, all that type of stuff. You are going to have to feed these snakes rodents. All snakes are going to need to eat. You can get things like reptilinks. I don't know enough about their hold prey diet to give you guys any information on them, but I've seen them out there. But as a rule, you're going to have to feed your snakes rodents. Some snakes, like for example ball pythons, are very picky. So sometimes you're going to have to feed them live. That is something that was very hard for me the first time I ever had to feed something live. It's very difficult to do, and some people just cannot do it. And that is okay. Then probably you should look at a different type of reptile, something that eats more bugs. Reptiles that eat vegetables or bugs that don't actually need whole prey. But When it comes to snakes, you're going to need to be able to feed them. Some of them will eat frozen throughout their whole life, but some of them are going to need live once in a while. So make sure you have that in mind. Not all of them are just going to perfectly eat frozen for you. Sometimes you'll have to get live. Sometimes you'll have to do things like that. Make sure that's something you're okay with before you buy this animal. But that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do videos every single Wednesday, and I'll see you next Wednesday.